The dam broke at 11:47 a.m. on a Tuesday in late spring. Commander Hayes and her team had exactly 40 minutes before 10 million gallons of water turned the valley into a death trap. They didn't know this yet. The morning had started like any other patrol day in the Cascade Valley Wildlife Preserve. Hayes led her 6-woman ranger team through dense forest along the valley floor, following up on reports of illegal trapping activity. The air was thick with the smell of pine and recent rain. Above them, the Morrison Dam held back the reservoir that fed 3 counties downstream. Rivera walked point, reading signs in the disturbed earth. Fresh tracks. 2, maybe 3 people. Heavy loads. Her voice was low over the short-range radio. They'd been tracking the trappers for 6 miles, finding evidence everywhere. Snare wire, disturbed ground, blood traces where animals had been processed. This wasn't subsistence hunting. This was commercial poaching of protected species. Parker checked her equipment. Base, this is Alpha Team. We're approximately 2 miles into the valley. Continuing pursuit of suspected trappers. Signal strength good. Copy, Alpha. Weather Service shows clear conditions. You're authorized to proceed. What the Weather Service hadn't predicted was that the Morrison Dam's north spillway had developed a hairline fracture 3 months ago. Inspectors had noted it, tagged it for repair, and scheduled maintenance for next month. The recent heavy rains had turned that hairline fracture into a structural failure point. Bennett, their medical specialist, moved carefully through the underbrush. She'd been a trauma surgeon before joining the Forest Service, drawn to work where medicine met wilderness. Commander, I'm seeing more blood trails. Whatever they're catching, they're not being careful about it. Mitchell, still the youngest on the team despite 2 years of service, spotted something ahead. Movement, 30 meters between those cedars. The team spread into tactical formation, weapons held low and ready. Through the trees, they could see a makeshift camp. Tarps stretched between trunks, cages made from scavenged materials, and 3 men working quickly to pack equipment. Federal Rangers, Hayes called out. Hands where we can see them. The trappers froze. For a moment, Hayes thought they might run. But then the oldest one, a weathered man in his 50s with a grey beard, slowly raised his hands. We're not armed, he called back. Don't shoot. On your knees, hands on your heads. The team moved in professionally, securing the 3 men with zip ties while Rivera and Collins checked the camp. What they found made Hayes's jaw tighten. Cages containing river otters, a young black bear, 2 bobcats, all protected species. Some were injured from the snares, pacing frantically in their crude prisons. We're going to need wildlife transport, Bennett said, examining the bear cub through the cage bars. This one has an infected leg wound, maybe 3 days old. Without treatment, it'll lose the limb. Hayes keyed her radio. Base, this is Alpha. We have 3 suspects in custody and multiple protected animals requiring immediate rescue and veterinary care. Requesting backup and wildlife transport to our location. Static crackled. Then, Alpha, stand by. The pause was longer than it should have been. Alpha, this is Base Commander Wilson. We have a situation developing. Morrison Dam has reported structural failure in the north spillway. Emergency services are being mobilized. Hayes felt her stomach drop. What's the timeline? They're attempting emergency repairs now, but Hayes, if that spillway fails completely, the valley you're in will flood. How quickly can you evacuate? Rivera was already checking the map. Commander, we're 2 miles in. Nearest high ground is the eastern ridge. That's 4 miles through rough terrain. Hayes did the math. With prisoners and carrying cages of injured animals, they might make 3 miles per hour if they were lucky. 4 miles meant over an hour, probably closer to 90 minutes with the terrain. Base, we can evacuate in approximately 90 minutes. What's our window? The silence that followed told Hayes everything she needed to know before Wilson even spoke. Hayes, the engineers give it 40 minutes, maybe 50 if we're lucky. The fracture is spreading faster than they can compensate for. 40 minutes, 4 miles, 3 prisoners, multiple injured animals, through terrain that fought you for every step. Parker looked at Hayes, waiting for orders. Mitchell's hand tightened on her rifle. Collins stood perfectly still, reading the commander's face for the decision that would determine if they lived or died. Base, understood. Alpha Team beginning immediate evacuation. Hayes out. She gathered the team close, kept her voice calm and clear. Listen up. We have 40 minutes to get to high ground. That means we move fast, we move smart, and we don't stop. Rivera, you lead navigation. Fastest route to Eastern Ridge. Collins, your rear security. Parker, maintain open communication with base. I want updates every 5 minutes on that dam status. What about them? Mitchell gestured to the 3 trappers, who had heard enough to understand they were all in danger. They come with us, Hayes said firmly. And so do the animals. The older trapper spoke up. You're going to carry cages through 4 miles of forest in 40 minutes? That's suicide. Leave the animals. We can barely make it ourselves. Hayes turned to face him, her expression cold. We're rangers. We don't leave animals behind to die. And despite what you've done, we're not leaving you behind either. So I suggest you start moving when we tell you to move. Bennett was already assessing the animals. The bear cub is maybe 40 pounds. I can carry it in a transport cage. The otters are smaller, but we have 4 of them. The bobcats are in rough shape. One's barely conscious. We take them all, Hayes said. Redistribute weight among the team. Mitchell, you and Collins handle the otter cages, 2 each, they're lighter. Bennett, you take the bear cub. Rivera and Parker, you each take a bobcat. I'll manage the prisoners. Commander, that's going to slow us down significantly, Rivera said carefully. I know, but we're not having a debate about it. We save them all, or we explain to base why we didn't. Hayes checked her watch. 38 minutes. Move. The team moved with practiced efficiency, securing cages with straps distributing weight. The animals sensed the urgency, their movements frantic. The bear cub made small, distressed sounds. One of the otters chittered anxiously. The older trapper watched them work. You're really going to try this? We don't try, Collins said, securing a cage to her pack. We do it. They started moving at 11:52 a.m. 35 minutes until the engineers estimated complete spillway failure. Rivera led them at a punishing pace. The terrain immediately fought back. Dense underbrush, fallen timber, steep inclines covered in loose shale. Every step required concentration. The cages added awkward weight that threw off balance, made every movement harder. The 3 prisoners moved in the middle of the formation, hands still zip-tied but free to walk. Hayes had made a quick decision. It was faster than trying to physically move them. The older man kept pace well enough. The younger 2 struggled, but fear kept them moving. Base, this is Alpha, Parker called out, slightly breathless. 5 minutes in, making approximately 2 miles per hour. Status on dam? Alpha, the fracture is expanding. Engineers are evacuating the dam facility. Estimate 30 minutes until catastrophic failure. Hayes did the math again. 30 minutes. They'd covered maybe a third of a mile. They needed to cover 3 2/3 more. The numbers didn't work. Pick up pace, Hayes ordered. We need 3 miles per hour minimum. Mitchell, carrying 2 otter cages, was already breathing hard. The young ranger had stamina, but the weight and terrain were brutal. Commander, the otters are getting stressed. One of them is... A sharp cry from the cage. One of the otters was having a panic response, thrashing against the wire. Keep moving, Bennett called from ahead. Stress is better than drowning. They pushed on. The forest that Hayes loved, that she'd sworn to protect, had become an obstacle course designed to kill them. Every tree was something to navigate around. Every slope was a challenge with the awkward loads. The prisoners stumbled frequently, and each time they fell, precious seconds evaporated while getting them back to their feet. At 15 minutes, they'd covered roughly 3/4 of a mile. 25 minutes remaining, over 3 miles to go. Rivera called back. Commander, there's a creek bed ahead. Normally it's dry this time of year, but with the recent rains it's running. Maybe 3 feet deep, 15 feet across. We'll have to wade it. Water. The irony wasn't lost on Hayes. They were running from water that would kill them. Toward water they had to cross. Can we go around? Adds a mile. We don't have a mile. Then we go through. Single file, secure the animals, help the prisoners across. Move. The creek was ice cold, fed by snowmelt from higher elevations. The current was stronger than it looked, pulling at legs, threatening balance. Mitchell went first with her otter cages held high, water reaching her waist at the deepest point. The otters screamed in fear. Parker followed with a bobcat cage. The semi-conscious animal barely reacted to the water. One of the younger prisoners slipped on the rocky bottom. went under briefly. Collins grabbed him, hauled him up sputtering and gasping. "Keep your feet under you or you'll get us all killed." They made it across soaking wet, water pouring from equipment and clothing. The added weight of wet gear made everything harder. "Base, this is Alpha. 20 minutes in, crossed creek obstacle, making slower progress than needed. Alpha, you need to be aware. There are multiple tributary streams that feed into that valley. When the dam fails, it's not just the reservoir water. Flash flooding will fill every channel. You need to reach high ground before..." Static interrupted. Then silence. "Base, come back. Base, do you copy?" Nothing. Parker checked her equipment. "Signals still showing strong. I don't know why we lost them." Hayes made a decision. "Doesn't matter. We know the situation. Keep moving." But it did matter because now they didn't know if they had 25 minutes or 20 or 15. They didn't know if the dam had already failed and a wall of water was racing toward them right now. The team pushed harder. Bennett, carrying the 40-pound bear cub, was struggling. The cage wasn't designed for distance carry and the straps were cutting into her shoulders. Rivera dropped back to help redistribute some of her gear, taking ammunition and medical supplies. "I'm fine," Bennett insisted. "Save your breath for moving," Rivera replied. At 25 minutes, they'd covered maybe a mile and a half. The eastern ridge was visible now through the trees, a steep rise of granite and earth that promised safety. But it was still over 2 miles away, and the terrain was getting worse, not better. They started seeing water. Not the flood, not yet. But seepage, small springs that hadn't been there before, forced up through the ground by pressure from somewhere. The earth itself was warning them. The older prisoner noticed it too. "That's groundwater displacement. The flood is coming. We need to move faster." "Then move faster," Hayes said grimly. Mitchell stumbled, went down hard on her knees. One of the otter cages hit the ground, the impact making the animal inside shriek. Collins helped her up, checked the cage. No damage. Otter stressed but unhurt. "I'm sorry," Mitchell gasped. "Don't apologize, keep moving." The younger ranger's knees were bleeding through her pants. She didn't slow down. At 30 minutes, they heard it. A sound like distant thunder, but constant. Growing. Not from the sky, but from behind them, from up the valley where the dam stood 7 miles away. The dam had failed. "Run!" Hayes didn't shout it. She roared it. "Everyone run!" Exhaustion evaporated in the face of pure survival instinct. The team ran, prisoners ran, animals shrieked and thrashed in their cages. The sound behind them grew from thunder to roar to a physical force that pushed air ahead of it. Parker risked a glance back and saw it. A wall of white water 30 feet high, churning with debris, destroying everything in its path. Trees snapped like toothpicks. Boulders the size of cars tumbled in the current. Faster! The eastern ridge was a quarter-mile ahead. So close. The slope was steep, rocky, but it was high enough they just had to reach it. The flood reached the creek they'd crossed 20 minutes earlier. The gentle 3-foot-deep stream became a raging torrent in seconds, the water finding the channel and filling it with incredible speed. 200 yards to the ridge. Hayes could feel the spray now, mist in the air from the violence of the water behind them. The ground shook with its approach. 100 yards. The younger prisoners were flagging, terror giving them speed but bodies reaching their absolute limits. The older man grabbed one, physically pushed him forward. "Move!" 50 yards. They hit the slope and scrambled up, hands and feet, cages banging against rocks, gear snagging on vegetation. Mitchell fell again. Collins grabbed her pack and hauled her bodily upward. Bennett's bear cage came loose from one strap, swinging wildly, the cub wailing in fear. 25 yards. The water reached the base of the ridge behind them, hitting with the force of a liquid avalanche. Spray shot 50 feet in the air. The roar was deafening. 10 yards. Hayes reached the top first, turned, reached down. "Come on!" Rivera emerged, then Parker with her bobcat, Mitchell and Collins with the otters, Bennett with the bear. The 3 prisoners, gasping, collapsed on solid ground. The flood raged below them, 40 feet down now, filling the valley they'd been standing in just minutes before. The water was brown with sediment, churning with debris, trees, equipment, parts of structures from upstream. The entire landscape had been transformed in seconds from forest to violent river. They'd made it. For a long moment, nobody spoke. They just breathed, stared at the water, processed the reality that they'd come within seconds of being swept away and killed. Mitchell was crying, quiet tears mixing with sweat and spray. Collins sat with her head between her knees, shaking. Parker tried the radio with trembling hands. "Base, this is Alpha. We're alive. We're on the eastern ridge. We made it." Static. Then finally, "Alpha, we lost you. Thought confirmed you made it to high ground?" "Confirmed. All personnel accounted for. 3 prisoners in custody. Animals secured." There was actual emotion in Wilson's voice when she responded. "Outstanding work, Alpha. Outstanding. Emergency services are en route to your location. Helicopter ETA 20 minutes. Hayes looked at her team, soaking wet, bleeding from a dozen small cuts and scrapes, utterly exhausted, but alive. Every single one of them alive. And the cages around them contained animals that would have drowned, that would have died in those cages, terrified and alone. The older prisoner spoke quietly. "You really did it. You saved us and the animals." "That's the job," Hayes said simply. "We were killing those animals. We were the reason they were in cages. You could have left them." Hayes turned to look at him directly. "We're rangers. We protect the forest and everything in it. That includes animals that were trapped by criminals. It includes criminals who made stupid choices. We don't decide who deserves to live based on their past actions. We just save who we can save." The man nodded slowly, looking at his zip-tied hands, then at the raging flood below, then at the women who'd carried him to safety despite what he'd done. "Thank you," he said quietly. Bennett was checking the animals. The bear cub was stressed but uninjured. 3 of the 4 otters were okay. One had a minor injury from the panic, nothing critical. The bobcats were in rough shape, but both were breathing. Both would survive. "They're going to make it," Bennett reported. "All of them are going to make it." Parker finally got her communication gear fully operational again. "Commander, Base is saying the dam failure was complete. The entire reservoir emptied into the valley. If we'd been 5 minutes slower..." "We weren't," Hayes said firmly. "We made it. Focus on that." Rivera was staring at the flood, watching whole trees tumble past in the current. "That was the closest I've ever come." "Same," Mitchell admitted, wiping her eyes. Collins looked at Hayes. "You made the call to bring them all. The prisoners, the animals. If we'd left them..." "We didn't," Hayes interrupted. "And we never will. That's not who we are." The sound of helicopter rotors reached them before they saw the aircraft. A National Guard rescue bird, yellow and black, fighting the wind currents created by the flood. It found a landing spot on the ridge, 200 yards north of their position. "Let's move," Hayes ordered. "Get the animals and prisoners to that bird." They made the short walk on legs that felt like rubber, adrenaline finally fading, exhaustion flooding in to replace it. The helicopter crew jumped out to help, taking cages, assisting prisoners, showing professional concern for the bedraggled rangers who'd just outrun death. The animals were loaded first. The bear cub looked at Bennett through the cage bars as it was carried away, and for just a moment the animal seemed to understand it had been saved. The 3 prisoners were loaded next, secured by helicopter crew. The older man caught Hayes' eye as he was helped aboard, nodded once. She nodded back. Finally the team boarded, collapsing into seats. Someone handed out water bottles. Someone else produced emergency blankets. The crew chief, a woman who'd clearly seen a lot of rescues, looked at them with respect. "You're the Rangers who called in the emergency evacuation? We thought you were dead when Base lost contact." "We're harder to kill than that," Rivera said tiredly. The helicopter lifted off, and through the open door, they could see the full scope of the disaster. The valley was gone, replaced by a massive, churning lake. The forest they'd walked through that morning was underwater. The ridge they'd reached jutted from the flood like an island in a violent sea. If they'd been 3 minutes slower. 2 minutes. 90 seconds. But they hadn't been. "Base, this is Alpha aboard Rescue Bird. En route to..." Parker paused, looked at the crew chief. "County Regional Medical Center. 30 minutes out. En route to County Regional. Prisoners in custody. Animals secure, team intact." Wilson's voice came back, and this time there was no hiding the emotion. "Copy, Alpha. Well done. Damn well done. See you when you get back." The flight took them over the devastation. They could see where the dam had been. Just a broken concrete scar now, water still pouring through the gap. They could see emergency vehicles on the roads, evacuation centers being set up, disaster response mobilizing, and they could see the ridge they'd reached, a thin line of safety that had been the difference between life and death. Mitchell looked at Hayes. "Commander, when you made the call to bring the animals, to not leave them behind, did you know we'd make it?" Hayes was quiet for a moment. "No, I didn't know. The numbers didn't work. We had too far to go and not enough time. But I knew that if we survived and left them behind, we'd have to live with that. And I knew that this team doesn't leave anyone behind, human or animal, if there's any way to save them. Even if it meant we might not make it. We're rangers, Mitchell. We run toward danger, not away from it. We save who we can save, protect what we can protect. That's not conditional on whether it's convenient or safe. That's the job." The young ranger nodded, processing that. Collins, listening, spoke up. "If the engineers had been 30 seconds less accurate in their estimate, if the dam had failed 1 minute earlier—" "It didn't," Hayes said firmly. "We made it. Everyone made it. That's what matters." But privately, in a part of her mind, she wouldn't share with the team. Hayes was doing the math. 90 seconds. That's how close they'd been. 90 seconds between safety and catastrophe. 90 seconds that could have killed them all. And she'd chosen to carry the extra weight, to burden the team with cages of animals and prisoners who'd trapped those animals. A faster team might have had 5 minutes to spare, might have reached the ridge with time to catch their breath before the water came. But a faster team would have left living creatures behind to drown in cages, and Hayes would take 90 seconds of margin every time if the alternative was abandoning the helpless to save herself. The helicopter descended toward the medical center's landing pad. Emergency personnel were waiting. Doctors for the team, wildlife specialists for the animals, law enforcement for the prisoners. As they touched down, Bennett looked at the bear cub one last time. The young animal was curled in the corner of its cage, exhausted, traumatized but alive. Tomorrow it would go to a wildlife rehabilitation center. In a few months, after treatment and recovery, it would be released back into the wild, because 6 women had decided that its life mattered enough to risk their own. The team disembarked, handed off their charges, and stumbled toward the emergency room entrance. Behind them, the helicopter prepared for another flight. There were more people to evacuate, more rescues to coordinate. In the ER, they were separated for evaluation. Hayes sat on an examination table while a doctor checked her vitals, cleaned scrapes, assessed for hypothermia and exhaustion. "You're incredibly lucky," the doctor said. "All of you. I've seen what flash floods do to people caught in valleys. The fact that you made it out is not luck," Hayes said quietly. "Training, teamwork, and refusing to give up." The doctor nodded. "Still, the timing was extraordinary." "The timing was close," Hayes corrected, "but we made it." 6 hours later, after evaluations, debriefings, hot showers, and dry clothes, the team gathered in a conference room at the Ranger base. Commander Wilson was there, along with representatives from emergency services, wildlife management, and the county sheriff's office. "First," Wilson began, "I want to say that what you did today was exceptional. Against nearly impossible odds, you evacuated yourselves, 3 prisoners and 7 protected animals from a flash flood zone. Every single life you were responsible for survived. That's extraordinary." The wildlife representative, a woman named Dr. Sanchez, spoke up. "The animals you saved, the river otters, black bear cub, and bobcats, all of them are doing well. The bear will make a full recovery. The otters are stressed but unharmed. The bobcats will require more intensive care, but both will survive. Without your actions, all 7 of those animals would have died." "And the prisoners?" Hayes asked. The sheriff's representative nodded. "In custody, facing federal charges for poaching protected species. They've all made statements. The older one, Jacob Marsh, specifically requested I pass along his gratitude. He said you could have left them behind and no one would have questioned it. We're not in the business of leaving people to die," Hayes said simply. Wilson pulled up video footage on the screen, aerial shots from news helicopters of the flooded valley. The destruction was total. Everything below the waterline was gone. The engineers have confirmed that the dam failure was complete and catastrophic. The reservoir emptied in approximately 15 minutes. The volume of water was equivalent to, Wilson paused, reading from notes, approximately 10 million gallons moving at speeds up to 40 miles per hour. Parker whistled softly. We outran that. Barely, Rivera muttered. Barely is enough, Collins said. Wilson continued. There's going to be a full investigation into the dam failure, engineering assessments, all of that. But what matters for this discussion is that you, Alpha Team, performed your duties under extreme circumstances and achieved a result that most experts are calling miraculous. It wasn't a miracle, Hayes said. It was 6 professionals doing their jobs. It was both, Wilson replied, and it's why I'm recommending the entire team for commendations. You saved 7 endangered animals and 3 human lives while saving yourselves. That's the definition of exceptional service. Mitchell spoke up hesitantly. Commander Wilson, I need to report that I fell twice during the evacuation. I may have slowed the team down. Wilson looked at her steadily. Ranger Mitchell, in a 4-mile sprint through extreme terrain while carrying awkward loads, you fell twice and got back up both times. That's not a failure, that's resilience. Your commander reported that you never stopped moving, never complained, and maintained focus throughout. That's exemplary performance. The young ranger nodded, clearly processing that. The meeting continued for another hour. Details, reports, procedural requirements. But eventually it ended, and the team was free to leave. They walked out together into the evening air. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and red. Rivera broke the silence. I keep thinking about how close it was. Don't, Bennett advised. Focus on the fact that we made it. But if the dam had failed 1 minute earlier? It didn't, Hayes said firmly. We can drive ourselves crazy with what-ifs. What if the engineers were wrong? What if we'd run faster? What if we'd left the animals behind? None of that matters because we made the decisions we made and everyone survived. Parker leaned against the building. I lost count of how many times I thought we weren't going to make it. Same, Collins admitted. When I saw that wall of water behind us, I genuinely thought that was it. But it wasn't, Mitchell said quietly. Because we didn't stop. We didn't give up. Hayes looked at her team. Exhausted, bruised, but unbroken. Today was the kind of day that reminds us why we do this job. It's not about routine patrols or paperwork. It's about being there when it matters most, making the hard calls, doing what needs to be done, even when success seems impossible. Are we always going to cut it that close? Mitchell asked. I hope not, Hayes said with a slight smile. But when we do, I know I have a team that won't quit. That's worth more than any margin of safety. They stood together in the fading light, watching the sun disappear behind the mountains. Somewhere in those mountains a valley was underwater, but the animals that had been trapped there were safe. The people who'd been in danger were alive. Hand's 6 Rangers had proven once again that impossible was just another word for difficult. Tomorrow's going to be brutal, Rivera predicted. Paperwork, interviews, assessments. Tomorrow can wait, Hayes said. Tonight, we remember that we're alive. We did our job and we made a difference. To making a difference, Bennett said, raising an imaginary glass. To making it out, Parker added. To the team, Collins finished. To the team, they echoed together. The sun set completely, and stars began to appear in the darkening sky. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new missions, new dangers. But tonight, they could rest, knowing they'd faced the flood and won. Not through luck, not through miracle, through training, teamwork, and the absolute refusal to leave anyone behind. That was the job. That was who they were. And as they walked back to the barracks together, Hayes allowed herself a moment of pride. Her team had faced an impossible situation and made it possible through sheer determination and skill. The valley would recover, the forest would grow back, the animals they'd saved would return to the wild, and Alpha Team would be ready when the next impossible mission came calling. Because that's what Rangers do. They face the flood, they outrun the water, they save who needs saving, and they come home. Every single time.